Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who made your mind spiral with curiosity? Someone whose presence lingers long after they've left the room? Like their scent is still folded into your shirt collar, their laughter replaying softly in the background of your thoughts. Now flip the question. What if you could become that person for her? What if every time she pours her morning coffee, sees a stranger who walks like you, or hears a song you once hummed in the car, you take over her thoughts like a soft echo she can't shake? This isn't about manipulation. This is about magnetic intimacy. Because you see, in love, what remains unforgettable is not perfection. It's presence. It's the feeling someone gives us when they see us. Not just glance, but truly see us and stir something inside us we didn't even know was asleep. You don't have to be the richest, the strongest, or the most handsome man in the room. But if you understand desire, if you understand mystery, if you understand emotional resonance, you'll awaken something in her that stays long after goodbyes. In this video, I'll show you how to cultivate that kind of presence, how to make her want to think about you, not out of obsession, but out of fascination. Have you ever noticed how the people we think about the most are rarely the ones who try the hardest to impress us? Instead, they're the ones who leave a little space, a little mystery, a little pause between their words that invites us to lean in. It's in those quiet spaces that we begin to wonder about them, imagine them, fill in the blanks with our own desires. Ladies and gentlemen, there's an art to becoming unforgettable, and it's not about chasing, convincing, or pleasing. It's about connection, resonance, and the kind of subtle seduction that doesn't scream for attention, but rather whispers something deep to the subconscious. You see, the human mind is not drawn to certainty, it's drawn to meaning. And in romantic relationships, especially for women who have been overstimulated by predictable patterns, it's not the loudest voice that sticks, it's the one that invites reflection, the one that stirs emotional texture. A woman doesn't obsess over a man who is always available. She obsesses over the man who makes her feel something, whether that feeling is curiosity, warmth, desire, intrigue, or emotional safety. It's the feeling that becomes addictive, not the man himself. So, how do you become that man? It starts with presence. Not just physical presence, emotional presence, psychological presence. When you're with her, are you really with her? Are you hearing not just her words, but her pauses, her tone? Are you responding to what's said, and also to what's not said? When you look at her, is your gaze passive, or do your eyes communicate that you see her, that you're not just attracted to her beauty, but to her inner world, that you're curious about how her thoughts unfold, how her day shaped her mood, how her silence carries a story? Women are emotional archivists. They remember what was felt in your company more than what was spoken. And a man who brings full, attuned presence into the room, who listens like her voice matters, who looks like her spirit is interesting, becomes someone her mind returns to again and again. But let's go deeper. It's not just your presence in the moment, it's the impact of that presence, what emotional imprint you leave behind. Because the truth is, desire lives in absence. And you don't need to be physically present all the time to stay on her mind. What keeps you in her thoughts is the emotional residue you leave behind, the tone of the last text you sent, the humor in your voice during your last phone call, the way you smiled at her when she was speaking, and then simply listened without interrupting. These become anchors, mental bookmarks. This is where many men confuse consistency with availability, and they're not the same thing. You can be emotionally consistent, meaning you are reliable, grounded, and steady in how you treat her without being constantly available. Constant availability often comes across as over-eagerness, and paradoxically, it short-circuits desire. Because desire needs air, it needs tension, it needs the distance that invites longing. So if you want her to think about you constantly, you must master the balance between presence and absence. Not disappearing, not playing games, but creating enough space for her imagination to enter the relationship. Because the imagination is where desire truly lives. Let me explain. When you're not with her, what does she remember? Does she remember a man who made her feel calm, seen, understood? Does she remember laughing with you so hard that her ribs hurt? Or feeling so emotionally safe that she said something she's never said aloud before? When a woman starts reliving those moments in her mind, she's not just thinking about you. She's thinking about how you made her feel about herself in your presence. And that is the most magnetic quality you can ever offer. Now let's talk about something crucial, polarity. You've likely heard of masculine and feminine energy, but I want to explore it through a different lens. Feminine energy, in its rawest form, seeks to be moved, to feel, to surrender in the presence of something trustworthy and bold. Masculine energy, when expressed with warmth and awareness, becomes the safe container in which the feminine can express, expand, and rest. When you embody that container, not through dominance, but through groundedness, depth, and clarity, you become deeply attractive. Not because you are trying to be someone else, but because you're anchored in yourself. You're not reacting to her moods. You're not chasing her validation. You're simply being, and your being becomes an invitation. So often, men think they need to impress her with accomplishments, with charisma, with knowledge. But what truly draws a woman in, what keeps her thinking about you when she's washing the dishes or lying awake at night, is how safe she feels to be fully herself around you. How much she can soften in your presence. How deeply she feels your attention when you're not even saying a word. Now, this brings us to the next layer, emotional contrast. Because to make her think about you constantly, you need to awaken contrast in her emotional experience. It's not about being perfect. It's about being unpredictable in the right ways. Too many men operate like emotional spreadsheets, logical, consistent, linear, and while that's important in the realm of stability, it lacks surprise. And surprise is the twin sister of desire. When was the last time you surprised her not with gifts, but with your depth, with vulnerability, with a question she wasn't expecting, with a stillness that said, I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here with you. Do you know how rare that is? When you're able to alternate between moments of stillness and moments of playful chaos, when you can go from deeply attuned to teasingly mischievous. She doesn't know what's coming next. And not knowing is intoxicating, but only if it's grounded in sincerity, because if she senses manipulation, it's over. Women have radar for that. So the key is this: create unpredictability with inconsistency. Let your emotional presence be steady, but your expression surprising. Let her feel both safe and slightly off balance in the most delicious way. This is how you plant seeds in her mind, not through control, not through performance, but through authenticity that is full of nuance. And finally, let's not forget the power of withholding, not in a punishing way, but in a way that honors your boundaries. That says, I enjoy being with you and I also enjoy being with myself. When a man is not afraid of his own solitude, he becomes deeply intriguing. A man who needs nothing becomes the one she wants everything from. So, instead of texting her every hour, give her a moment to wonder. Instead of rushing to respond, give her the gift of anticipation. Instead of explaining everything, leave a little mystery. Because what she doesn't know, she'll start imagining. And that imagination will pull her back to you again and again. It's not about disappearing. It's about being felt even when you're not there. And when you learn to do that, when you master presence, emotional impact, polarity and contrast, you don't just become a man she likes. You become a man she can't stop thinking about. If you're still with me, it means something in you recognizes this. Perhaps you felt the shift before, when your attention was no longer chasing her, but becoming magnetic, when you stopped trying to impress, and instead allowed your inner world to speak for itself. This is the point where many men ask, but what do I do? How do I keep her intrigued when I don't have control over her thoughts? And I say, good. Because you're asking the right question, but in the wrong direction. It's not about controlling her thoughts. It's about creating the kind of internal experience that naturally echoes in her memory. So let's talk about narrative. Every woman is the author of her own emotional story. And when she meets you, she doesn't just see your face or hear your voice. She starts writing a chapter. One you don't even know you're in yet. What kind of character are you in her story? Are you the man who brings color to her grayscale days? Are you the moment of stillness in her chaos? Are you the one who sees beyond the polished mask she wears for the world? Because here's the secret. When a woman can insert you into her story without forcing the fit, when your presence makes sense in the arc of her emotional life, she begins to carry you with her. Not because she has to, but because she wants to. And this is where emotional fluency comes in. Most men are fluent in logic, but not in feeling. But when you learn to name not just your thoughts, but your states, when you can say things like, there's something tender in the way you just looked at me, and it made me pause. You awaken something inside her. You give her permission to feel, to unfold, to come closer. And that moment, small as it might seem, is enormous. Because in a world that so often demands that women be strong, performative, productive, you become a mirror to her softness. You become the invitation to come home to herself. And when you do that, you don't have to beg to stay in her mind. You're already there. Let's talk about emotional originality. One of the reasons a woman can't stop thinking about a particular man is because he didn't sound like anyone else. Not because he had flashy lines or perfect words, but because his presence was honest. And his language was his own. How many men say you're beautiful? Almost all. But how many men say, there's something raw in the way you hide your eyes when you smile? And I find that more captivating than anything else. It's not about poetry. It's about precision. It's about using language that touches her in places she didn't know were open to be touched. When your words come from real perception, from noticing her rather than performing for her, you stop sounding like a script. You stop sounding like someone who actually sees. That level of detail, that level of care, it's what makes her lie awake and hear you're voicing her mind. So start listening with your eyes, speak with your silences, learn to hold tension without rushing to fix it. Let there be pauses, glances, moments of breathless waiting, and yes, flirt, but flirt with substance. Now let me take you into something more subtle, unpredictability. I don't mean mood swings, I don't mean inconsistency. I mean the ability to keep revealing new dimensions of yourself without warning. One day you're thoughtful and introspective, sharing how you dealt with grief when you lost your father. Another day, you're spontaneous, driving her into the countryside because you wanted to watch a sunset that looked like fire licking the clouds. The next, you send a text that simply says, "I'm still thinking about the way you looked at me when you didn't know I was watching." You're consistent in your interest, but you're unpredictable in your expression. She never fully knows what part of you she'll meet next, and that keeps her intrigued. It creates a story that keeps unfolding, and stories are what we fall in love with. Now, let's shift towards something equally powerful: absence. And I don't mean ghosting, I mean the sacred distance, the pause that gives desire room to breathe when you're not around her. Are you still someone of value, someone she imagines growing into, someone whose life is rich, curious, textured even without her in it? That's not rejection. That's attraction, because women want to feel chosen, not chased, and they can't feel chosen if they sense you have nowhere else to go. So make your solitude beautiful. Fill it with meaning. Don't wait around hoping for her next text. Read a book that moves your soul. Practice something with your hands. Cook yourself a meal that tastes like memory. Tend to your inner world. Why? Because when you show up again, she'll feel it. She'll feel the difference between a man who needs her attention to feel alive and a man who is already alive and simply shares that aliveness with her. That contrast, it's unforgettable. Let's go deeper now, because we're not just here to be intriguing, we're here to be transformational. Have you ever heard a woman say, "I don't know what it is about him, I just can't stop thinking about him"? That "I don't know" is usually code for "made me feel something new." So become the man who awakens something unfamiliar, not chaotic, not toxic, but new. Maybe she's never met someone who looks her in the eye when she's speaking and doesn't interrupt. Maybe she's never had someone remember something small she said a week ago and bring it up as if it mattered. Maybe she's never been held in silence, just held with no expectation, no performance, no rush. These are the moments that crack a woman open, because when you treat something as sacred, it becomes unforgettable. And here's the paradox: when you stop trying to make her think about you constantly and start offering experiences that are rich, meaningful, and unexpected, she will. Not because you manipulated her, but because you moved her. And movement, emotional movement, is what memory is made of. So instead of asking, "What should I text her next?" ask yourself, what moment did we create the last time we were together? Did it linger? Did it awaken something? Because you don't stay in someone's mind through noise. You stay through impact. Now, I want to speak on the masculine energy that holds without pushing. There's a kind of emotional availability that's magnetic, not because it's needy, but because it's unshakable. When you're grounded in your values, when you know who you are, when you speak your truth without armor, but with backbone, she can't help but think about you, because there's no performance, no mask, just a man who lives in integrity. And here's the twist. Most women don't think they want a man who challenges them, but the ones they remember always do. Not in cruelty, not in ego, but in truth. The man who says, "I don't agree, but I want to understand you." The man who says, "I want to see more of who you are, but only if you're ready to show it." The man who says, "I desire you, but I also honor myself." These are the men who leave imprints, not footprints. They don't beg, they don't chase, they invite, they mirror, they hold, they stir. And when you become that man, attuned, steady, surprising, sovereign, she won't be able to stop thinking about you. Not because you hacked her psychology, but because you touched her soul. There comes a moment, often without warning, when a woman realizes she's no longer just thinking about you, she's thinking with you. You're not just a memory playing in the back of her mind. You've become part of her emotional vocabulary, her interpretations, her lens. You're there when she makes decisions, when she reflects on herself, when she wonders if she's growing or standing still. And that, my dear listener, is how you truly linger, not by being loud, not by being perfect, but by becoming meaningful. So how do we tie all of this together? We begin with emotional presence, the kind that isn't just reactive, but receptive. You don't have to impress her with grand gestures, but you do have to be real. Be available in your truth. Let her meet you, not your performance. You keep her intrigued through contrast, not by being erratic, but by letting your different dimensions breathe. Maybe she meets the playful you one day and the deeply introspective you the next. Maybe you're soft in one moment, then incredibly direct in the next. This isn't contradiction. This is texture. When she experiences you as more than one tone, as a symphony rather than a single note, you begin to occupy more emotional space inside her. You become someone she can't fully define, and people cannot stop thinking about what they cannot fully define. And this brings us to emotional risk. Yes, risk. Because nothing makes a person linger in our minds like someone who showed us something real. So many people go through life armored. They only reveal what is expected. They only say what is safe. They only touch the surface. But when a man takes the risk to speak with depth, to feel out loud, to ask questions that stretch her, to offer reflections that invite her closer, Without forcing her in, he becomes unforgettable. You might be thinking, but what if I expose that side of myself and she pulls away? Then she's not your story. But at least you were honest in the telling of yours. And here's what's beautiful. When you speak from your depth, you awaken hers. It becomes a kind of resonance, a vibration between two souls that says, I see you there behind your guard. Come out if you want. I'm not here to trap you. I'm here to meet you. Now let's explore romantic minimalism. Not everything needs to be grandiose. Sometimes it's a single sentence that she remembers for weeks. The way you say, I love the quiet you bring into a room. The way you gently move a strand of hair from her face and look at her, not with lust, but with reverence. The way you pause before leaving and say, being around you feels like home I didn't know I missed. These are not performances. These are emotional precisions. And when placed in the right moment, with the right tone, they echo. Women are not waiting to be dazzled. They're waiting to be felt with. They're waiting to feel safe enough to surrender. They're waiting for the moment when they don't need to translate themselves. So when you become the man who listens for what isn't spoken, who responds not just with logic but with awareness, you don't just become attractive, you become intimate. And intimacy is what lingers. Let's take a breath here, because I want you to understand this isn't a list of tricks. This isn't a checklist to hack someone's affection. This is about becoming so connected to your own emotional world that when you step into hers, you do so with care, with interest, with grace. And from that place, you leave behind something more than a memory. You leave a feeling of being met, being known, a feeling of being desired not just for the body, but for the whole person. Let's speak now of honoring space. Not every woman who crosses your path is meant to obsess over you, and not every connection is meant to last. But every connection, if you're intentional, can leave something beautiful behind. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let go at the right time, with dignity, with clarity, with a loving goodbye. Why? Because a man who doesn't cling, a man who releases with respect, becomes deeply respected. We remember those who leave us with more peace than chaos. And that's a final truth about how to stay on her mind. Be the man who leaves her better. Be the moment she thinks about when she doubts herself. Be the conversation that made her rethink what love could feel like. Be the silence that didn't rush to fill the air. Be the feeling of being held without hands. When you become this kind of presence, she will not only think about you constantly, she will long for you, not because she needs you to fix her, but because being with you makes her more of who she already is. And isn't that the most romantic thing of all? So, if you've been listening, wondering how to make a woman think of you in the quiet moments of her day, the answer isn't louder gestures. It's deeper ones. It's not about being unforgettable in what you do, but in how you do it. How you touch, how you pause, how you observe, how you respond. Not with force, but with curiosity. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she replays in her mind when she's alone. That's the man whose presence becomes a home she revisits in her imagination. And that, my dear friend, is where real intimacy begins. So be that man. Not just for her, but for yourself. Because when you become deeply present in your own life, when you nurture your own depth, when you speak from truth and move with tenderness and self-respect, you no longer need to be remembered. You simply are. Thank you for watching. If this moved you, even in a small way, I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you can start doing today to leave more presence, not performance, in your relationships? And if you want more real conversations like this, more truth, more soul, more understanding, make sure you subscribe. This channel isn't just about relationships. It's about becoming the kind of person who draws love because they live with love. Click the like button if this gave you something to think about. Share it with someone who deserves to hear it. And always remember, you are not here to be consumed. You are here to be known, to be felt, to be remembered, exactly as you are. Have you ever noticed how certain people become unforgettable, not because of what they did, but because of what they stirred in you? They didn't overwhelm you. They didn't dominate your days, but somehow they touched something so subtle, so delicate that it rewired how you saw yourself. And once you see yourself differently through someone else's eyes, you never go back to who you were before. That is how you become unforgettable, not by inserting yourself into her life, but by showing her a new dimension of her own. It's strange, isn't it, that we think people stay in our minds because they are impressive, but often it's because they made us feel more ourselves. So, if you want her to think about you constantly, make her feel seen in the places she hides. Make her feel beautiful in the places she's unsure. Make her feel brave in the places she once felt ashamed. That's the man who becomes a mirror she returns to. You see, desire doesn't live in security alone. It also lives in tension, in polarity, in anticipation, in that sweet space between certainty and mystery. And this is something many men forget, especially those who want to be kind, generous, respectful. They confuse comfort with intimacy and end up erasing the very thing that keeps a woman emotionally engaged. Don't get me wrong, kindness matters, safety matters, but desire needs friction, a gentle tug of the unknown, the question that hovers in the silence, the slight delay in your response, the look you give her that says, I know something about you that you haven't told me yet. When you allow that tension to exist, not in a manipulative way, but in an emotionally intelligent way, you awaken her mind, because her mind needs space to wonder, and where there is wonder there is memory. Think about it. What do you remember more? The person who was always available, always predictable, always agreeable, or the one who challenged your assumptions? Who made you pause? Who made you feel something new, even if you didn't fully understand it? We don't crave what's familiar, we crave what's resonant. So let her feel your attention, not just in words, but in restraint, in when you choose to speak and when you choose to hold silence. Let her lean in toward you. Let her sense that you are not trying to possess her, but that you could and you choose not to. This is where power and intimacy intersect, not in control, but in choice. Now let's talk about something that often gets overlooked, your life outside of her. Many men make the mistake of abandoning their identity the moment attraction begins. They cancel their gym sessions. They abandon their creative passions. They spend every hour available to them just waiting. And here's the paradox: the more you orbit around her, the less gravitational pull you have. Because what makes someone linger in our thoughts is their sovereignty, their independence, their wholeness. When a woman senses that your life is full, when she knows you have purpose, friendships, rituals, adventures, thoughts that are entirely your own, she doesn't feel like your savior, she feels like your witness. And that is far more powerful. She doesn't want to complete you, she wants to meet you. She wants to meet the man who is already complete, and yet still chooses to open a space for her. So live richly, go to places alone that move you, listen to music that brings you to tears, write, dance. Learn a new skill. Read something that shakes your worldview. Spend time with people who light you up, because when you bring that version of yourself to her, she doesn't feel like your world, she feels like someone invited into it. And she will think of you constantly, not because you were desperate for her attention, but because you had the strength to be whole in your absence. This brings us to imagination, and this part is sacred. You don't just want to be remembered in her mind. You want to be imagined in her future. So what kind of emotional imprint are you leaving now? What emotional scenes are you creating? The way you touch her arm when she's unsure, the way you ask, what does your soul need right now? The way you remember the name of her childhood pet and mention it when she's feeling small. These are not tricks, they are emotional landmarks. And when she recalls them, she doesn't just remember you, she remembers herself with you. That version of her, more alive, more honest, more relaxed, more open, is who she begins to crave. And because you are tied to that version, she craves you. So ask yourself, what kind of woman does she become in your presence? Because that's who she'll keep returning to. We often think we fall for others, but sometimes we fall for ourselves as we are in their company. So be the man who evokes her best. Be the moment of stillness when she feels scattered. Be the wild laughter when she forgets how to be light. Be the calm eye of the storm when life spins too fast. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be the smartest man in the room. You don't need to perform. You just need to feel, to listen, to witness, to carry yourself with dignity, curiosity, and a touch of mystery. And you will take root in her. You'll occupy space not through force, but through feeling. And that feeling is what she'll keep coming back to. Even when you're gone, even when the text thread goes quiet, even when you're not chasing her. Because when a woman feels something profound in your presence, her mind doesn't let it go. It replays it, it reimagines it, it returns to it like a familiar scent or an unfinished poem. You become the unsolved mystery she doesn't want to solve. Not because she's confused, but because she's enchanted. And enchantment is stronger than certainty. So if you're still wondering how to make her think about you constantly, stop trying to make her. Start being. Be depth, be presence, be pause. Be patience, be unpredictability wrapped in emotional consistency. Be silence that says more than noise ever could. And I promise you she will think about you, not just when she's lonely, but when she's full. Because your memory won't just be comfort, it will be a kind of coming home. Sometimes what lingers in the heart is not the moment itself, but the afterglow, the residue. The breath you shared just before you said goodbye, the quiet in her chest when she closes her eyes and remembers the way you said her name, not as a label, but as an offering. That's how she begins to think of you, not in sudden floods, but in soft recurring waves, a scent, a memory, a moment, a whisper. You see, the desire to be remembered isn't really about ego, it's about impact. It's about knowing that your presence in someone's life meant something, that it created a shift, however small, in the way they move through the world. And if you want her to think about you constantly, let that be your guiding intention. Leave her better than you found her. This is not about perfection. This is not about never making mistakes. This is not about being the smoothest talker in the room. It's about being awake in her presence. It's about being brave enough to say what you really feel. It's about being still enough to hear what she's not saying. Because a man who listens with his soul, instead of just his ears, that's the man who becomes unforgettable. Let's speak now of emotional echoes, the kind that sneak into a woman's day not with force, Familiarity. When she walks into her favorite cafe and the smell of the espresso reminds her of the morning you took her there, when she hears a melody you once hummed and suddenly her chest aches, when she puts on the scarf you wrapped around her shoulders in the cold. That's not coincidence. That's residue. You left something there. You weren't trying to be unforgettable. You were simply being fully present in that moment. And presence, real presence, always leaves a mark. You see, memory isn't built on intensity. It's built on intimacy. And intimacy isn't grand, it's precise. It's the way you trace your fingers around the rim of her coffee mug as you listen. The way you ask about the scar near her left eyebrow and really want to know. The way you remember that she loves thunderstorms but is afraid of being forgotten. It's not about being impressive. It's about being aware. And when she feels that awareness, she attaches your name to safety, to meaning, to depth. That's when she starts to think of you without effort, without control. Now let's talk about non-attachment. Because one of the most powerful ways to stay in her mind is not to demand a place in it. When you release the need to own her thoughts, you make space for her to choose you there, freely, lovingly, with curiosity, not pressure. And what we choose on our own, we value far more deeply. So be the man who doesn't chase. Be the man who doesn't prove. Be the man who offers and then steps back. Let her come to you, not because you pulled her, but because she was moved. Let her feel the silence between your moments and still want to return to them. Let her remember you not because she was overwhelmed, but because she was seen. This is where love begins, not in the pursuit, but in the resonance. Now, I want to say something to the man who is listening and wondering, but what if I do all this and she still forgets me? That's possible. And it's okay, because this isn't about making someone think about you against their nature. This is about becoming the kind of man who naturally leaves an imprint, who touches others with depth, who connects with care, who doesn't need to be remembered, because everything he does is already meaningful. And when you become that man, you will be remembered, not just by her, but by the world around you. Your friends will feel calmer in your presence. Your family will feel more understood in your arms. Strangers will feel safer when they speak to you. This is the energy of the unforgettable. It's not loud. It's not polished. It's not hungry for validation. It's peaceful. It's present. It's undeniable. And that, my dear friend, is the man who lives in her thoughts without asking to. So today, I invite you to stop asking, how can I make her think about me? And start asking, how can I live so meaningfully that her mind chooses to return to me, even when I'm not around? Because that's when it's real. That's when it's love. That's when you're not just in her life, but in her story. You become the pause in her breath before she says something vulnerable. You become the smile she gives herself when no one's watching. You become the warmth she remembers when everything else feels cold. And that is a presence no woman forgets. So if you're watching this and you're ready to embody this level of depth, this emotional clarity, this quiet power, then I see you. And I honor that in you. Let your life be a reflection of your presence. Let your words mean something. Let your silences carry gravity. Let your hands create safety. Let your eyes hold truth. And when she thinks of you, let it be not because you begged for her attention. Let it be because your energy still echoes in the spaces you once stood. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this message reached a part of you that's been quiet for too long, I invite you to say something in the comments. Tell me the one moment in this video that stayed with you. I want to hear from you, not as a fan, but as a human. And if you're ready to live in love with more intention, more mystery, more resonance, subscribe to this channel, because every week we go deeper, not into tactics, but into truth. And I'll leave you with this. The right woman doesn't remember the man who tried the hardest. She remembers the one who made her feel the most. Be that man, and she won't just think of you constantly, she'll feel you, even when you're gone. Until next time, take care of your heart, and take care of hers.